Today, I wanted to bring you a communication concept that is one of the most important communication concepts for thriving relationships. As you and I know, communication is the grease for relationships. It's what allows it to flow. It's what makes things easy. And when communication breaks down, that's what creates friction. And most fights, most disagreements come from some sort of communication breakdown. It's either there was no communication or miscommunication, or it's how we're communicating actually gets in the way. One of the best communication books I have ever read is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And he talks about a concept that I want to share with you today that can be a game changer and is not easy to do, but when you ultimately execute it, it's incredibly freeing and nurturing for the relationship. And so Marshall in this book talks about 3 stages to get to what's called emotional liberation. That when most people start out in emotional slavery, and in fact, we're raised that way. And emotional slavery states you feel responsible for somebody else's feelings. And that if you don't act the right way, you're going to make them mad. People might use a guilt trip or fear or shame to cause you to behave a certain way because you're responsible for making them happy. You think about how we were raised as kids. Do this, be a good little boy so mommy's happy. Don't do that or I'm going to get really mad. And so we get conditioned that we're responsible for how other people feel. And that is emotional slavery. In fact, stress comes and suffering comes when we try to control that which we cannot control. And whether or not you're aware of this, you have no control over how somebody else feels. Now, you may object to that and say, well, I can piss somebody off anytime I want. I can make them happy. I can bring joy to their world. And let me argue that point and say you can, but only with their permission. Think about this. If you walk up to somebody and you try to piss them off, but you don't have their permission, you could say all manner of things to somebody and try to get them to fight with you. But if they're not willing to engage and they're coming from this place of centeredness, you'll just go right by them, water off a duck's back. Think about 2 people in the same circumstance having completely different experiences. The only thing that's controlling their experience is their decision, their perspective of that experience. 2 people in cars in stop and go traffic, rush hour traffic. One person stressed out, feeling angry, feeling irritated for the traffic. The other person, peace of mind, feeling great, listening to music. Same circumstance. It's that person's mindset. So the first awareness is that you actually do not have control over how somebody else feels. You can influence them, but only with their permission. And so then what Marshall talks about is then when people become aware of this for the first time, they'll often swing into the second stage, which is what he calls obnoxiousness. And I love that he calls it this, because that's kind of what it feels like, where once someone who's really been emotionally enslaved to other people, I feel like they're walking on eggshells and it's super stressful. To finally free themselves of that, they get obnoxious. They're like, I'm not responsible for how you feel, so I'm going to do whatever it is that I want. You are responsible for how you feel. And you see this happening, actually. There's a big kind of social movement around this where take responsibility for how you feel. Like, I can say whatever I want. I can sing as loud as I want in this house, and you shouldn't get annoyed because you are responsible for how you feel. That's the obnoxious stage. And if you're willing to evolve through that, you get to this place called emotional liberation. And the way he describes emotional liberation is that you realize that, yes, you are not responsible for how other people feel, and you're willing to take full responsibility for how you feel, full responsibility for your intentions and your actions, and at the same time, you're able to offer up compassion and understanding for how somebody else feels and seek to get their needs met along with your needs. It's not one is greater than the other, but there's this equivalent. You want both of your needs met. And so case in point, just recently, I got finished with a large event. And then this next weekend, I've got a business mastermind that I'm attending. And I don't like to spend 2 weekends away from home because my wife and I, we love to have our date nights. I love to play with the kids on the weekend. And yet this particular weekend coming up is one of those experiences. And so my wife was coming to me, sharing with me how disappointed she was and how sad she is that we're not getting a date night this weekend. And if I was in emotional slavery, I would take that feeling on as my responsibility, that I've created the frustration and the sadness because I'm decided that I'm going to go to this business mastermind. But moving to emotional liberation, I can have compassion for her frustration and sadness because, quite frankly, I feel the same way. There's a part of me that's frustrated and sad that we're not going to get that time to connect. And I know there is a way for both of us to get our needs met, for us to create extra time, for us to create possibly a date night during the week, even though we're not going to have it during the weekend, or extra time on the other end of that where I take a couple extra days off. But not feeling responsible for somebody else's feelings is incredibly powerful because it enables you to think more clearly, enables you to understand their emotions and their needs, for you to understand your emotions and needs and where they're separate. And that's key because from that place, you can find out a solution for how to get both of your emotions and needs met. So I challenge you, where in your own life do you feel like you might be in emotional slavery? In other words, feeling responsible for how somebody else feels. It might be with a parent, it might be with a friend. And instead of swinging into obnoxiousness, swing into emotional liberation, where you honor how they feel, you're compassionate for how they feel, and you want their needs to be met, but you're not taking that on as your responsibility because you cannot control how somebody else feels. The only thing you can do is control how you feel, how you act, and the intention and the love that you are bringing to this world. So my question for you is, what parts of your life is this easy to practice, and where might this be a challenge for you to practice emotional liberation? Go ahead and post that in the comment section below. And here's to you living an even more liberated, even more abundant, even more amazing life. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.